Yo, what is going on, guys? Welcome to another episode of the EPA Podcast, that is Eagles Player Analysis, led by myself, Victor Williams, and my co-host here, Shane Haff. Appreciate you guys for joining us for another episode. Got some great feedback on the debut episode last week. Some feedback we probably didn't deserve, but but great feedback. Nonetheless, appreciate you guys for tuning in to Bleeding Green Nation here and checking us out and keeping up with all the Eagles coverage, even throughout the bye week and the Phillies and everything that's going on in the city of Philadelphia. I'm your host, like I mentioned, Victor Williams. You can follow me on Twitter, Instagram, everywhere else at the Philly Pod. Be sure to do the same for my partner here, Shane Haff. At plug all your handles because I don't know if they're different, the same. I still don't know.
Yeah, it's just at @halfandhalf_TPL on Twitter. And then in my Twitter bio is the best place to find anything else.
Link tree.
Got the link tree. I hit 100 subscribers on YouTube, but YouTube is going to the handles thing now, and I still don't qualify. So it's still just a whole bunch of random letters and numbers. So hopefully that'll be fixed soon.
I actually just launched. Well, not launched yet, but I just created my YouTube channel. I've basically done all the other avenues like Twitter, Instagram, podcasting. Now I've ignored YouTube for as long as possible to this point. Like now I just have to bite the bullet because I don't think I don't think I have the greatest camera presence, which is why I've strayed away from YouTube. But I have to get in that mix. So I just started the channel and I'm designing the thumbnails, and it is a lot of work. But here we are, trying to figure it out. Who knows when I'll get a YouTube handle? Shane will beat me to that. But be sure to go.
maybe not.
Follow
my YouTube is all just for like all 22 stuff. Everything else I would rather just podcast. But
that's what people want to watch, though. That's what people
all 22. I needed a place to put it, and so the YouTube is new and it shot up to 100 subscribers. So hopefully we can get that handle soon.
Hey man, it's all about staying in the algorithm, like I mentioned. So the Eagles, coming off the bye week, still remain 6-0. Obviously, all the other NFC East teams won their games and closed the gap. Giants are now 6-1. Still don't buy into them, but they have a heck of a coaching staff. But as long as Daniel Jones leads the charge over there, I'm not scared of them. Dallas won upon Dak's return, and of course the Commanders won the minute they benched Carson Wentz, which is not a shock to anybody. So Shane, before we get into the preview matchup with the Steelers, what is your kind of perception? I like how we talk about like a whole rundown before the show, and now we're already like veering off track because we didn't even talk about this. But what is just your general like takeaways, reactions to how the NFC East is right now? The NFC least is no more, and we're once again the best division of football.
I think the Cowboys are the second best team in the NFC. You need to see Dak sort of get back in a rhythm. Their offense hasn't been great, but it was his first game since week 1. So assuming their offense comes up to like an average level, like I think they're a contender in the NFC. And the Giants, they keep winning. It keeps being close, but it's a possibility given the state of the NFC that the 3 best teams are in the NFC East. And that's just kind of crazy. I think all 3 teams are going to make the playoffs this season. So you could probably look to a divisional rematch in a playoff game this offseason.
Yeah, I mean, with the way the rest of the NFL even looks, it's hard to find good teams, let alone great teams. Like we talked about it to an extent last week. It's Eagles, Chiefs, Bills, and like maybe the Giants, maybe the Vikings you can count as upper echelon teams. But man, everyone else is not looking great. It is a struggle just to find good teams in the NFL right now. But us as Eagles fans and Eagles analysis, we're not going to complain on this end because if the stars are ever going to align, this is going to be the year. So the upcoming Steelers now, Kenny Pickett, out of what was it? He was in concussion protocol, whatever he was in, played last week. Didn't look great. 7 interceptions, just 2 touchdowns. It has been a rough ride for him over there in Pittsburgh. And Mike Tomlin just might be on the horizon of his first career losing season as a head coach. I don't think he's had one yet, but he just might have one this year. What are some early indications of how you think that this Eagles game is going to go this Sunday in the Battle of Pennsylvania? It's not really going to be a battle, in my opinion, but we'll still call it the Battle of PA.
Yeah, I think Pickett is obvious. I think Pickett is a better quarterback than Mitch Trubisky, but the fact that we have to say, I think, that's not good. It doesn't bode well for the Steelers. Their only win since week 1 was against the Buccaneers, which doesn't look that impressive now as the Buccaneers dropped another game to the Panthers.
The lowly Panthers, the fire sale Panthers at that.
Yeah. And at that, Kenny Pickett got hurt and Mitch Trubisky came in and led that charge down the stretch. So as I've watched Pickett, I've seen some things that I like from him. He's athletic to a degree. I mean, he's not a Kyler Murray, but he likes to make plays scrambling with his feet. So he wins with athleticism. He takes a lot of checkdowns, doesn't really push the ball downfield. 70% of his passes this season have been under 10 yards. So it's going to be a lot of underneath things. When he does try to push the ball downfield, it just doesn't go well. On 20-plus yard passes, he's completed the same number of passes to the defense as he has to the offense, going 5 of 14 with 5 interceptions. So there's just not much of a vertical threat with the offense. And so it really should allow the Eagles to get aggressive, to challenge those underneath throws, and just, challenge Pickett to win in a way that he hasn't. And that's pushing the ball downfield against Darius Slay and against James Bradberry.
Yeah, despite their lack of production, the Steelers have a talented group of receivers. I would say Deontay Johnson, who was a part of that 2019 crop of wide receivers that got a draft class rather that got paid last offseason. You have George Pickens, who I'm not going to say I wasn't too high on him in the draft, but I thought there was a lot of red flags there. But he's been pretty good thus far. And Chase Claypool is apparently on the trade block. Is that a rumor? Is that a report? I don't know, but I'm seeing his name running around the trade block, so they'll have to figure out what they're going to do with Chase Claypool. Like you mentioned, the defense is going to be able to key in on Kenny Pickett, in my opinion. Pickett, as talented as he is, I think he is a much better quarterback than what he's shown thus far. He was the first quarterback off the board for a reason in the draft, and he fell further than what I thought he was going to fall. So I think the talent is there, but the Pittsburgh Steelers just have a lot of stuff to figure out. But they have some pieces in place. Najee Harris, I'm a big fan of, and I think that they can do some things. It just won't be fun for them against the against the Eagles. The Eagles have outscored their opponents by 34 points in 3 home matchups, and the Steelers have been outscored by 50 in their 4 away games this year. And when they're facing a well-rested Eagles team, I don't think it's going to go too well for them and company. If there was one key matchup, Shane, if there's one key matchup that the Eagles fans, I wouldn't say should be worried about, but one key matchup that they should have their eyes on that could propose a problem at some point during the game, what matchup would you say that would be?
If we're looking at the Steelers offense against the Eagles defense, I think it is George Pickens. You mentioned him. I loved Pickens in the draft. I actually had a first-round grade on Pickens, and
a lot of people did.
He fell to the second round, and I started to question myself. But then when the Steelers picked him, it's kind of like if the Steelers pick a receiver, you just ask yourself what you miss, because the Steelers have done so well picking receivers. And Pickens has been Kenny Pickett's favorite target. He plays almost exclusively outside, and he's the only vertical element of their offense. And the vertical element of their offense is throwing contested catch balls to George Pickens, and he's done so well in those situations. He's aggressive at the catch point. And so I think you watch how the Eagles handle that, whether they put Darius Slay or James Bradberry on him. I think Bradberry is a little more physical corner than Slay. He's a little taller. Maybe you would put Bradberry on him. Either way, I would be committed to having a safety draped over the top of that, especially in any of the long yardage situations where you're likely to just get that vertical ball. But if you can take away the threat of George Pickens, which is easier said than done because he is so good at the catch point, I really don't know how the Steelers move the ball other than long, methodical drives. And I don't trust Pickett to continually make the right decisions to sustain a 15-play drive against this defense.
Yeah, I don't think that's going to bode well for them. George Pickens so far this season, 26 catches, 338 yards, 1 touchdown. I was kicking myself because before the season started, for the degenerate gamblers out there, which I consider myself one, George Pickens was plus 5,000 odds to win Offensive Rookie of the Year. After one preseason game, it shot all the way up to like plus 1,000, and the cash out is already looking pretty good for that. And I ignored it because I wasn't in love with him in the draft. And yet another draft take that I have to take an L on because I just didn't. I thought the red flags were just too much to overcome in Pickens' case. But I think he owns one of the highlight reel catches this year, that over the shoulder, crazy, like one hand, whatever it was. So he already has one of the better catches that we've seen so far this season. And if Kenny Pickett can put it on the money, they can do some damage. But to your point, Shane, Bradberry is the bigger of the two corners, the more physical of the two. As far as the numbers say, where I'm not saying he's better than Slay, but the numbers, and obviously he's matched up on number 2 guys all year long, but the numbers say he's the better of the two as well. So I expect Bradberry to be able to handle that. Slay's probably going to be on Deontay Johnson, and they'll figure out what they're going to do with Chase Claypool, who's still trying to figure out what his role is hence the trade rumors thus far. Along the offensive line for the Steelers, Shane, we know the Eagles propose problems on defense, and I think they're tied for 7th in sacks right about now. They generate good pressure, and there might be another pass rusher on the way. We'll have to see how that shakes out in a week or so. But how do you think the Pittsburgh offensive line is going to fare against the tenacious Eagles defense? You have Reddick, you have Sweat, Brandon Graham, actually kind of shallow at that spot since Derek Barnett has been gone. But thankfully, everybody has stayed healthy. Is there anything to worry about along the offensive line for Pittsburgh, or is this going to be a potential murder scene we're going to see at Lincoln Financial Field?
I think that the Steelers' offensive line, everybody remembers the Steelers' offensive line being a joke over the last couple of years, how awful that it's been. And I'm not saying that their offensive line is great by any means now, but it's certainly been better. If you look in terms of like ESPN's pass block win rate, they're not as bad as people think that they would have been. They're not a great team by any mean. They're still down. They're at 10th, 62% in pass block win rate. So it's not a terrible pass blocking offensive line. They really struggle as a run blocking team. They're 27th in run block win rate. And you see that really easily when you look at their DVOA, their yards per carry, that they're 3.7 yards per carry this year, which is ranked 28th in the league. They have the 30th ranked rushing DVOA. They're 28th in rushing EPA. So they can't run the football, which bodes well for an Eagles defense that wants to dare you to run the football and then struggles to stop it. In terms of pass protection, I feel like they've been solid. They're not an elite unit. There's certainly better units in the league, but I think they'll hold their own. I think if you get after Pickett a lot in this game, it's going to be a lot more just that rookie mentality of bailing out of the pocket, maybe bailing out of some pockets into pressure, than it is actually going to be the Eagles defensive line just dominating the Steelers pass rushing. And that's okay. I wonder if you see an approach like the Eagles took against the Cardinals with Kyler Murray. And obviously Pickett and Murray are not nearly the same level as athletes. But in that game, it felt like the Eagles were committed to keeping Murray in the pocket and not letting him scramble. There was a lot of contain rushes. There was some QB spies. Kazir White was spying a decent amount. I wonder if they're going to take that approach with Pickett, or if they just won't worry about it unless he starts to beat him. So that's something to keep an eye on. But I would imagine the pass rush will be a little bit slower this game just due to his mobility and their offensive line playing a little better in pass protection.
Yeah, the blueprint for this game certainly looks like it's going to be the Steelers. They don't have a lot of big play potential unless it's Pickens, like you mentioned. So it looks like it's going to be a slow pace, as it always tends to be with the way the Steelers play football. But the Steelers have failed to score more than 23 points in every game this year, and they've only scored more than 20, I think, twice. They've scored under 20 in 5 of 7 games this year. So it's looking like, again, for us gamblers, the under, I think it's 43.5. The under is certainly the play there. Shane, I don't know how much of a gambler you are, but the spread right now is, I believe, 10.5, which means the Eagles, if you win that bet, if the Eagles win by 11 points or more. If you already knew that, I don't mean to to dumb it down for you. But how confident are you that the Eagles win this game by at least 10.5, just for the gamblers out there that are potentially looking at that spread?
I feel like the Eagles should cover that spread.
Right.
It's a home game. You're playing off of your bye week against a team that has a rookie quarterback that struggles to run the ball, which is your biggest weakness. TJ Watt is still out. Like, all the matchups are advantageous for the Eagles. And yet it's so hard for me to ever take a double-digit spread. You get into garbage time, and weird things happen in garbage time. So I sort of make it a personal rule never to bet double-digit spreads. But if I was picking the game, I would say that the Eagles should win by double digits. I would have said the same thing against Arizona, though, and that turned out to be a little closer. So
anything over like 7 for me, because I hate the hook, and I feel like 6.5, like I can do it because you only need a touchdown. So anything like over that, I'm like, backdoor covers are a hell of a thing. A piece of news that could potentially alter that spread that just came out: Nick Sirianni said on his press conference just now that Lane Johnson is still in concussion protocol, so we'll have to keep an eye on that. Who's next in line? Jack Driscoll, if he can't go?
Yeah, it'd have to be Andre Dillard. Can't play right tackle.
No, he cannot. Do not put him there. Goodness gracious.
So it would have to be Jack Driscoll. Another note on the Steelers offense, though, I watched the Miami game yesterday,
Hmm.
the game they just played on Sunday Night Football. I rewatched that, and one of the things I noticed is Miami likes to get up and they like to challenge you in man coverage. And once the Steelers offense started going, I think Pickett had like a 7-for-7 drive, scored a touchdown. They started to transition out of those press man looks into softer zone coverage. And they were giving Pickett checkdowns and he was happy to take them, even to the detriment of the offense. Like there was one sequence where they got 6 yards on first down. It's a 2nd and 4. And he took back-to-back checkdowns to a running back and then they punted. So had a 2nd and 4, back-to-back pass completions. Couldn't pick up 4 yards. I think this will be a big game for the Eagles to rally and tackle, which is a little scary because the tackling's been subpar. If you're going to play that sort of game, if you're going to play that sort of soft, give up the checkdowns, you do have to be able to come up and make the tackles. So that's also something to keep an eye on from the Eagles defense perspective in this one.
Yeah, we definitely have seen our fair share of missed tackles. Marcus Epps is a culprit of that. He's always going for the as great as he's been this year. He's always going for the big hit. So Bradbury's been caught a few times, especially week 1. I think Swift caught him pretty bad on the recoveries. So yeah, they need to wrap their guys up because they have players that can make some plays. But the Eagles defense is surely talented enough to keep them at bay, and the offense certainly isn't. What's the word? They don't have enough continuity to really challenge the Eagles defense. Again, we can get into these trap situations. They have a few games coming up that could be trap situations after a bye week. So you don't know. Maybe the rest kind of gets to them. Is this a game? Do you think that the extra rest catches up to the Eagles? You think they come out rusty, or is Jalen Hurts and company so locked in and so driven to the point where that's probably not going to matter?
Yeah, I'm not concerned about that with
I'm not
under
either.
center. I don't think that the team is going to come out like that. The rest comes at a good time. Normally you don't like the early bye, but as banged up as the offensive line was, it comes at a good time. Obviously, if Lane Johnson's still in concussion protocol, he would have missed a game had it not been the bye.
Yeah.
It's pretty likely that he would be out by Sunday. I would imagine 2 weeks. He might not practice much this week, but I'm not concerned about them coming out rusty. What I'm more concerned about is I would love for them to just put this game away and maybe get a few of those banged up guys, the starters, out, because they are going to turn around again in 5 days and play Houston on Thursday Night Football. So anything you can do to put that game away early, park the bus, shorten the game, whatever you need to do, it would be nice not to sweat that one out late into the fourth quarter with a Thursday night game looming right after.
Yeah. I think it's it's going to be if Lane Johnson misses it, I think this is a game where they can afford to, probably all the way up until Green Bay. I continuously say the Eagles, knock on wood, will probably be 10-0, and they won't be challenged until Green Bay comes around. But maybe it won't be till Tennessee because Green Bay doesn't even look all that great. I believe Dickerson was in and out of the last game as well, so we'll have to keep an eye on his injury status. So yeah, the bye certainly came at a good time. Would have been without Lane Johnson for one game, and surely looks like he has the potential to miss this game as well. Shane, is there anything? Obviously, it's Wednesday and it's early, and the previews are all going to come filing in, of course, after we do this show. But is there anything else we have to touch on the Steelers and the key matchups before we go ahead to a break and come back with mailbag and trade deadline talk?
One last thing I would say offensively, and then I got a note on the defense too, but offensively, Kenny Pickett's clearly better utilizing play action than when he's not. His completion percentage jumps from 66% to 82% with
the play action. Is a young quarterback's best friend, I like to believe.
Yeah. And fortunately for the Eagles, Matt Canada, the offensive coordinator for the Steelers, he doesn't use it that much. 17% of dropbacks, they use play action. So it is something to keep an eye on. The Cowboys utilize play action against the Eagles well. When you struggle to stop the run, a lot of times your linebackers, your second level, will start to overcommit on play action. And so that's something you can keep an eye on for the Steelers if they start to utilize play action to get some chunk plays. And then flipping over to the defensive side, the Steelers like to play a lot of man coverage. Their man cover rate's a little over 40% on the year, which is 6th in the NFL. I just don't know how you do that against the Eagles, though. You have Jalen Hurts mobility. And so if you decide to play man coverage, you don't have eyes on the quarterback. If he can break the pocket like he's so good at doing, it's a big play waiting to happen. And then even removing his mobility, how are you going to play man coverage on Devonta Smith, on A.J. Brown, on Dallas Goedert? Like, there's going to be exploitable matchups for the offense there. So I think the Steelers should probably play a little more zone than they like to in this game, or they're going to have to spy on Hurts. And, who do you spy Hurts with? Miles Jack, Devin Bush are both athletic, but Hurts is bigger than both of them.
Right, he'll run them over.
We talk about cornerbacks trying to make a play in a run fit. Well, that's kind of the same dynamic when you have one of those guys trying to come up and hit Hurts. So I think this is a big game for the Eagles in terms of rushing. It's a good matchup for their interior offensive line. They're so good at working up to the second level. I would look for that. Miami attacked the Steelers with a lot of quick throws and then a lot of RPOs and play action. Pittsburgh chose to play backed off of the line because of the speed of Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. And the Eagles don't have those speed threats. They have Quez Watkins. He's obviously not the same caliber player as Hill or Waddle.
Right.
Maybe you'll get some of those deeper shots to Quez Watkins in this game, though, get him back involved. And if they choose to get up and press, you know that the Eagles like the ability of A.J. Brown downfield in single coverage. So I don't know how you defend the offense if you're the Steelers defense. Without TJ Watt, they're just a different animal, and I just don't think they have the answers for the Eagles offense.
Yeah, the omission of TJ Watt in that defense was a good point. I do remember seeing that the Steelers would likely be without him, and he's a big deal in that defense. So they have to try and make up for that kind of production because he was the defensive player of the year last year. No, so they have to. Yeah. There's definitely things to be had.
The game that they won against the Buccaneers was the first game they've won without TJ Watt since he was drafted. They were like 0-8 when he's missed games before that. So yeah, he's a key cog of how they run their defense, and it looks like he's going to be out again.
Yeah, that's not ideal. Not ideal. If you had to guess, and I'm going to test your football history here. If you had to guess who's winning the all-time series right now between the Eagles and the Steelers, who would you give the nod to?
It would be no more than a coin flip because I honestly have no idea. But I'll say the Steelers. The Steelers historically had some good football teams, so I'll just take a flying guess.
Yep, and they never beat the Eagles with those teams. No, I'm kidding. But the Eagles lead that series 49-28-1. So the Eagles are pretty dominant on the Steelers. But for the times that we have been alive, that's very fair. The Steelers have had some very good teams, and those early 2000s and those late 2000s Steelers teams were very formidable in the least. So hoping for a 7-0 record come Sunday, obviously, to continue the bedlam in Philadelphia with the Phillies winning the pennant and the Sixers finally got a win. So it's about time we saw that. We're going to take a quick break right here with Bleeding Green Nation. We're going to come back with a mailbag. We have some questions from Twitter as well as some potential trade deadline targets. The November 1st deadline is just 6 days away. And as we all know, Howie Roseman does not sit on his hands at the deadline. So we'll have some potential targets for you guys when we come back from the break. Keep it locked right here on Bleeding Green Nation here at the EPA Podcast.
Welcome back to the second segment of the EPA Podcast here on BGN Radio. We are going to get into a mailbag. I put out a mailbag on Twitter yesterday, and you guys responded. So we've got a few of your questions that we want to dive into to close out this bi-week episode of the EPA Podcast. So our first question, it comes in from @DatLee on Twitter. He said the second half of the season after an early bye will be long and arduous. And we've talked about, the disadvantages of an early bye, but how it sort of played in the Eagles' favor here. He asked, what is the single most catastrophic injury the Eagles could have in the second half of the season? And he threw out a few examples, Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, Jason Kelsey, A.J. Brown, Victor. Now, let's remove Jalen Hurts from this equation because obviously your quarterback going down would be the most devastating injury for almost any team. Mm-hmm. But Jalen Hurts aside, what do you think would be the most catastrophic injury the Eagles could have down the stretch?
Hey man, the Minshew fans wouldn't be wouldn't be in agreement with you saying that he can run this offense. Says some people, but man, when I take a look at the positions and of the very few weaknesses on this roster, the one that stood out to me even during the offseason and the one that still stands out to me now is backup tight end, because Dallas Goedert, if knock on wood for whatever reason we lose him, it's Jack Stahl, it's rookie 6th round rookie Grant Calcaterra, and we still don't have Tyree Jackson back. And was Noah Tonga even still around? Is he like on the practice squad somewhere? So that backup tight end spot is very, very shaky. If we lose Goddard, it's borderline like frightening. Like it's kind of devastating if you lose him, because Jack Stahl's more of the blocker, Calcaterra is more of the receiver, and neither of them are game changers in any way to this point in their careers. So I think an injury to Dallas Goedert, especially if it was for an extensive amount of time, I think that'd be pretty catastrophic to the Eagles offense.
Yeah, I agree with you. That was the first one that came to mind for me. I think you could make an argument for safety as well.
That's number two, definitely.
Yeah, and not Chauncey Gardner-Johnson because he's played so fantastic, but more because that would mean Kevon Wallace is on the field, and we
who
saw
shouldn't be on this roster. Who should not be on this roster? I will say it every week. He should not have made this roster. I don't know how he did it.
And we saw that against Dallas. So if either Chauncey Gardner-Johnson or Marcus Epps goes down, that could be catastrophic to your team.
Put in Blankenship before I see Kayvon, please.
Yeah, I would be fine with that. The other guys he mentioned, Jason Kelce, you would obviously hate to lose Jason Kelce, what he means for the interior of the offensive line, but I feel good about really sustaining any offensive line injury with Jeff Stoutland. They just spent a second-round pick on the guy Jason Kelce picked, who looked good in the preseason.
Very good.
So you wouldn't like that, but it wouldn't be insurmountable. A.J. Brown going down, obviously you don't want to say we just plug in Zach Pascal. A.J. Brown's much better player. He's a really good receiver, but with the amount of weapons that the Eagles have, I think they could sustain that. So I'm with you. Dallas Goedert is the biggest issue for me, and then followed closely behind safety.
Do you want my honorable mention? I would say edge rusher is probably an honorable mention. So it's Graham, Sweat, Reddick. You can whatever you want to position you want to consider Reddick. The depth is kind of shallow. I mentioned earlier since the season-ending injury to Derek Barnett, and Taron Jackson hasn't been. You're better at the all-22 stuff than me, but I don't know if Taron Jackson has done anything of note this year to make you believe he can be a consistent edge rusher, even in a rotational role. So I would chalk that up to also edge rusher. If you lose Graham or Sweat or God forbid Reddick for an extended amount of time, it's getting really thin there at edge rusher.
Yeah, I will admit, as I watch all 22, Taron Jackson is not typically my focal point.
Not the guy we're circling on the film.
Yeah, he's not the guy that I'm doing film breakdowns on. Maybe I should do that. But yeah, Derek Barnett, for as much as Eagles fans dislike Derek Barnett, him going down really hurt what the Eagles had at edge rusher in terms of depth. If you look at just their snap counts over the season, it's Josh Sweat, it's Brandon Graham, and then it's Taron Jackson that you see out there. That Kyron Johnson has played some, although he's been more rushing from a stand-up position. So I think their edge rushing depth is good, but if you got an injury, especially if that injury was to Josh Sweat, which would force Brandon Graham into more playing time. Like if it went the other way, if Graham got hurt and Sweat could pick up a little more slack, right? I'm not sure that Brandon Graham could withstand playing 65-70% of the snaps. So edge rusher is also one that I could see being problematic. If you lost somebody long-term for a week or two, you could be fine.
You could get over it long-term, yeah. Or short-term, rather. Sorry.
Yeah. Okay, let's move on to our next question. This one's always a fun one. People like to hear us rat ourselves out, so we'll oblige the listeners here. But Victor, what is the worst draft take that you have ever had?
Man. Well, I've had a few, and I notoriously call myself out every draft season. I'm like, yeah, this was the time. But it was me. I actually have two that are tied. So number one, it was that I don't want Justin Jefferson because he's a slot receiver. That might have been the worst analysis, or you can't even call it analysis, just the worst take like probably I've ever put out on Twitter. Because at the time I'm sitting here like I can't even remember who was coming out as a decent slot receiver for the Eagles at the time, but they had slot guys, and I was like, no, they had outside guys, and they needed I don't even know where I'm going with this. I just know that Justin Jefferson was I was so stuck on him playing in the slot, and I was like, we need an outside weapon for Carson Wentz at the time. So obviously he's the superstar that he is. Very, very poor take there. And my other one is that I wanted no part of T. Higgins. Definitely wanted nothing to do with T. Higgins. Thought he was a big guy. We had Alshon. We don't need another big, slow receiver. We need speed. We need quickness. We need explosiveness. T. Higgins is not the guy. And now he's formed one of the greatest wide receiver tandems in the league with Jamar Chase. So So those are my two guys that I'll happily talk about. Not proud of it though.
So we don't want to trust your wide receiver scouting, is what I'm hearing.
Hey, I was also very much on the Denzel Mims train in the draft as well. So yeah, maybe I'm not the guy. Dang, in hindsight, that is pretty bad. Maybe I'm not the guy to listen to about wide receivers.
Hey, everybody's got their position specialty, right?
Oh man, I really loved Denzel Mims. I loved him so much in the draft. I wanted everything to do with Denzel Mims. And then he said what he said about Philly, and I was like, I can get over it. You can bring in Denzel Mims, and he's on the trade block. If you want to have a chance at Philly, man, come on down.
All right. Well, I'll give two as well. One is worse than the other, but going back to the 2017 draft, the Eagles, before they traded up to number 2, when they were sitting at number 8, there was a lot of quarterback talk. I did not want the Eagles to trade up to take a quarterback. In fact, what I wanted the Eagles to do was to trade back in that draft and target Paxton Lynch.
Yeah, I was about to say Paxton. It has to be.
I fell in love with Paxton Lynch's arm talent. Watching his film, watching his pro days, and I knew he wasn't a pro-ready guy, but my thought process was he didn't need to be. The Eagles had Sam Bradford. He was going to be the starter for that year. You could bring Paxton Lynch in, try to develop that, and
they just paid Bradford too, like 2 years, $32 million or something like that.
Yeah, an alternative universe in a different situation, maybe Lynch does pan out, but I kind of don't think that was going to work out. So
not many universes where Lynch works out.
Yeah. So what I learned from that is that if John Elway likes quarterback, then I should not. You're in bad territory.
You didn't learn from Tebow, man. Come on.
I think that was all McDaniels, to be honest. But
that's also true. He was also not a good coach, by the way, as is evidenced by the Raiders. I'm tired of this Josh McDaniels getting chances as a head coach. It was evident the first time. It's evident this time. Stop giving this guy head coaching opportunities. I'm over this.
Or at least give him Dallas. Dallas might need a new head coach.
Oh, yeah, please go to Dallas. I'd be happy with that.
So my other one I'll go to, this one is a draft pick the Eagles did make that I liked. I liked the J-Jaw pick. I was all on board the J-Jaw.
You weren't by yourself.
I watched him in college, and I had him rated pretty highly because he was so good in contested catch situations. And what I realized later is that if every catch you make in college is contested, that probably means you just can't get open. And we saw that. The NFL physicality caught up with him. He couldn't do that anymore. So I'm kind of out on only contested catch guys. It's why I was a little nervous about Drake London in this draft. He was so much of a contested catch guy, but I was enamored, but I tried not to get sucked in too much, remembering what I learned from the J-Jaw thing.
Yeah, well, I mean, you weren't alone there. The catch radius was impressive. The separation was not. But in the second round, you could. Well, what were the other guys? He was debating between like Paris Campbell and some other guys. So at the time, it surely made sense. And the whole like Drake London thing. First of all, Arthur Smith doesn't even know how to use Kyle Pitts or Drake London. I think Mariota threw. First of all, the Atlanta Falcons were down multiple scores for the majority of that game, and Marcus Mariota threw the ball 14 times. Are you not throwing the ball when you're down? What is happening here? I don't know. I think that's the exact stat. 13, was it 14 pass attempts, something like that. And you have Drake London and Kyle Pitts, and what are you going to do? You're going to hand the ball off to your 6th round rookie running back. That is disastrous. I'm not a big Drake London guy, but he is being underutilized to the fullest extent in Atlanta. Sorry for that rant.
No, you're right. They were down. I'll go on it too for just a second. I just went on this rant on Chalk Talk last night reviewing this game, but they were down 28-17 at half, and Marcus Mariota in the second half went 3 of 6 passing with 11 net passing yards.
That's a disgrace. What is Arthur Smith doing over there?
They spent the number 4 overall pick on Kyle Pitts last year, and he has 178 yards through 6 games. They spent a top 10 pick on Drake London this year, and in the last 4 games combined, he's got 101 yards. Like, just put Desmond Ridder in already. But I'll get off that soapbox.
It's not even Mariota's fault. It's Arthur Smith is handing the ball off to a 6th round rookie running back. Why? Why are we doing this? You're not. Yeah, I at least act like you want to win the game. That it's notoriously known in the NFL that when you are down, you're going to throw the ball more, and that is evident more than ever in sports gambling, which is why I never do rushing props, because once you get away from the run, it's not going to hit unless you're a 6th round rookie running back in Atlanta, who apparently it doesn't matter if you're down 5 scores, you're still going to get carries for whatever reason. This is ridiculous.
So just start. So the gambling advice Victor's putting out here on the EPA podcast is take Falcons rushing overs this season.
Oh, you could have. You would have made a lot of money if you did that last week. You'd have made out well.
All right, let's move on. Our third question, it comes from Magnanimous Platypus on Twitter, which is a great name. He asked about the free agent and contract situations, which we sort of covered last week, so we won't relitigate all of that. We'll get a clearer picture as we go through the season. But the second part of his question is talking about the Jalen Hurts pending extension. Says, will Jalen Hurts ask for big money, or do you think he'll go on a more modest deal so the team can retain talent?
Well, he's not going to go on a modest deal, number one, because that is usually for it's not like James Harden and you're taking team friendly contracts because you want to win a ring. This is Jalen Hurts' first big contract in the NFL, a contract a lot of people thought Jalen Hurts wouldn't even get or be offered or be in the realm of possibly getting. His agent is very well, as we all know, this all-women team he has are very powerful, and they know how to negotiate, and they're going to make sure that Jalen Hurts gets every single penny that he is deserved, and he's proving at least 6 games into the season that he is well worth that contract. There was a point in time where people were asking if he is potentially going to get Ryan Tannehill money. He is now potentially in line for Kyler Murray money, which is shocking to think about considering the narratives that were being made prior to the season. So I think he's in line. I don't think it's going to be like a 6-year, probably maybe like a 4-year, a 4-year extension, something like that. I will say that 3 to 4 weeks ago, Jalen Hurts' market value was like $39.2 million. It has since gone up to $43.8 million average annual salary. $45 million a year this guy's going to be making. Do you know what that is, Shane? That is a 4-year, damn near $200 million extension for a second-round pick that the Eagles should have never taken to begin with. Thank God it worked out, but it's still a poor use of resources in hindsight. And yeah, moral of the story, Jalen Hurts is not going to take some chump change $28 million a year contract. He's going to get every penny, as he should, if he's going to be the face of this franchise for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, first of all, the quarterbacks don't take below market value. That's just not a thing, except for Tom Brady for a lot of years. But we won't get into why he was doing that.
There was a reason he did that.
But yeah, quarterbacks don't take below market deals. And if a quarterback were going to do it, it would be, a quarterback in his upper 30s looking for that one last ring, not a guy who's a second-round draft pick that's looking to get a big paycheck. Jalen Hurts knows how he plays. His agent's telling him, take a lot of hits. You need to get that money while you can, because who knows how long your NFL career lasts. 4 years, $170 million-ish, that'd be a bargain, I think, for the Eagles. If you can get into that 40, 41, 42 million range, I think that's a bargain. Now, if I'm the Eagles, I would want more of that like 4-year extension, 3-4-year extension, not like a 5, 6, 7-year extension, because I do have some concerns about the sustainability of this offense. Their offense is very simple. It's very collegey. That doesn't mean it's easy to stop, but teams that have run this style of offense, the Ravens, the Cardinals, they've transitioned away from it, and they've done it for a reason. Now the Eagles are getting great run out of it, but the question is, how long will that last? And even beyond that, how long can Hurts take the hits that he takes and play at that level? We know that when mobile quarterbacks start to fall off, they tend to fall off. You look at Cam Newton, you even look at Russell Wilson. And so I'm all in on Jalen Hurts right now. I don't know if I want to right now say I'm all in on Jalen Hurts in 2028. So shorter term, more average annual value is how I would want to structure that contract right now if I was Howie Roseman.
Yeah, 4 years under $200 million would be good for me. I'd be stunned to this point if it's even remotely under $200 million. But yeah, give him around that, and I'd be good to go. Because to your point, he's taking more hits than ever this year. That's the way the offense is run, and that's the way Jalen Hurts and Sirianni like it for now. But is he going to be able to adapt as a passer? Obviously, way too early now. The early indications are encouraging, but we'll have to see how that development works out. As we move forward.
Yeah. Okay, and then our last question here, and thank you to those of you that submitted questions, comes from Asa Minor 12. Maybe I said that right. Maybe I didn't. Don't yell at me. They asked, what are some realistic trade targets for the Eagles with the trade deadline looming, and are there any players they might look to trade away?
I'll let you have the lead on this one, because I feel like my targets are unique, and I've been leading a lot. I'll give you the spotlight for this.
Okay, well, I know you and I share this one. The tight end for the Denver Broncos, Alberto. I'm not going to try and say his last name. Alberto is good enough.
Okay, Bob, man. You can say it. Say it.
There you go. So, for the reasons that we talked about, a Dallas Goedert injury being devastating, the Eagles tight end usage is so key to their offense. They use Dallas Goedert in so many ways.
They potentially need two, even if Dallas Goedert is healthy. They should go and get another one regardless.
Right, absolutely. The Eagles like to run 12 personnel, and they're really good at it. The problem is Jack Stoll is not much of a receiving threat.
Nope.
Grant Calcaterra, you can't even line up in line. He's
not a receiving threat, period, to be honest. He had one nice little catch. Was it last week? One little 20-yarder. That was nice. But yeah, nothing crazy.
So when the Eagles do go 12 personnel, they're pretty well tipping their hand if it's run or pass by their second tight end. So Alberto, he's the odd man out. Greg Dulcich has been doing well in Denver. I think Alberto was a game day inactive last weekend. So
last 2 weeks.
The last
Healthy
2
scratch.
weeks. So he could be a cheap acquisition. I'm not saying he's a Dallas Goedert level player, but he can block and he can receive. He gives you some versatility there. So he's the number one target I would love to see the Eagles go get at the trade deadline. I think he could be had for a day 3 pick.
Yeah, we're on the same page there. Albert Okwuegbunam, I want to say how you say his name. Has some work to do as a blocker, but he can block, to your point, and he does give you another vertical threat in the offense for Jalen Hurts, which is beneficial. You know, they can't cover everybody, and if you leave Alberto open, he's at least going to catch and make some plays upfield. So I do like that. For the Eagles as well. I don't know how many other tight ends are going to be made available. I know Gesicki's name has been running around. I'm not sure how serious Miami is about that. I don't
like Gesicki for the Eagles, by the way.
Oh yeah, not really. Why is that?
He can't block. And so if you're looking at him as a replacement for Dallas Goedert, he's not. Like if Dallas Goedert were to go down, he's not a replacement because he can't block, and they use Goedert to block a lot in their running game. And if you're looking at him as a second tight end, he's certainly a better receiving threat than Grant Calcaterra, but it presents the same problem of tipping your hand when you put them both on the field. So I'm out on Gesicki. I don't want him.
Yeah, probably not the best ideal situation there. So the two targets, I think, one of them is probably you've heard of, and one. I think at safety, I think Jabril Peppers in New England makes a little bit of sense for the Eagles because we already talked about the safety depth or lack thereof. You're going to run out undrafted safety Reed Blankenship or a guy that should have been cut in training camp in Kayvon Wallace. We saw what happens when Chauncey Gardner-Johnson was in and out of that game. It wasn't a fun time. I think Jabril Peppers gives you a quality backup at safety and also some return man experience. Britton Covey hasn't inspired much confidence, returning kicks or punts or anything. So I think Jabril Peppers kind of doesn't kill two birds with one stone, but he does give you some things that you don't have right now. And the Patriots, he's only played like 33% of the snaps for the Patriots to this point. So I think that could be a good get for the Eagles. And a lot of people making noise about running back. I think, and I don't know, Chicago used him a lot more last week, but I think David Montgomery would be the Jay Ajayi parallel move for Howie Roseman. He's another guy. He's another guy on an expiring deal. So if you get him, you got to hope you can pay either Miles or Montgomery. One of the two has to stay for a late round pick. And I think the field that he excels in the most that the Eagles certainly don't have now is pass protection. Kenneth Gainwell is letting guys literally run by him right to Jalen Hurts. As the film guy, Kenneth Gainwell is not even picking up guys. And I think David Montgomery, as the 225-pound power guy, can not only run in between the tackles and wear down defenses and complement with Miles Sanders. I think he can also pick up blocks well and help out with blocking Jalen Hurts. So those are two guys I think would be beneficial to the Eagles as they gear up, obviously for a long playoff run.
Yeah, I like Peppers. I've heard his name a little bit for that return game and just the safety. Getting a safety makes a lot of sense too because it solves two problems for the Eagles. Mm-hmm. It solves the problem of what happens if Marcus Epps or Chauncey Gardner-Johnson goes down. It also solves the problem of what happens if Avonte Maddox goes down because you could put in a backup safety you felt comfortable with and then put Chauncey Gardner-Johnson back into the slot where he played so much in New Orleans. So it kind of gives depth at two positions. Another safety name that I thought of would be real familiar to Eagles fans is Rodney McLeod.
Oh, man.
So Rodney McLeod obviously walks in free agency last year to Indianapolis. Indianapolis is basically phoned in the rest of the season. They're benching Matt Ryan. They're going to go with Sam Ehlinger. So if they have decided that their playoff aspirations are over, maybe you could pick up the phone and make a call on a guy like McLeod, who is not an exceptional player, but he's sure better than Kevon Wallace. So I wouldn't mind, a 7th round pick for Rodney McLeod. You mentioned David Montgomery. He was also someone on my list just for his power running ability, kind of the downhill running, pass protection. I do kind of think that the Eagles are probably not going to make a move at running back. If they were going to make a move at running back, it's hard to believe that they wouldn't have topped a 6th-round pick for James Robinson, who just got traded to the Jets from Jacksonville.
Did anybody know he was available? I heard nothing about that until that trade, but knowing Howie, he probably had some inclination by then.
Yeah, I didn't know he was available, but I find it hard to believe that Howie doesn't have like a spreadsheet with every player that's available. And he's everyone's first call. So, I would have liked that fit. They didn't do that. It was such a small price. And so it makes me think that they're not in on a running back, or I guess it could be that they already have a line on one and we'll wait to see. And neither of us mentioned edge rusher. There's been a lot of edge rusher names that have flown around. Robert Quinn, obviously.
I didn't mention it because the names are too rich, which is why, like, Bradley Chubb, like I've written about, but like I just don't know how he does it. Like, another expiring deal, definitely going to cost. I mean, if they can make it work for a day 2 pick, just for the sheer fact that he's battled injuries and again an expiring contract. But man, he is a player at a premium position, a position that the Eagles already have $85 million tied into between Reddick and Josh Sweat. I just don't know if Howie invests a precious asset into a position that A, he's already invested in, and 2, it's just that contract's gonna be something.
Yeah, I think they're probably still an injury away from making an edge move. Like, if you go out this weekend and Brandon Graham got hurt, I have to believe they'd probably make a move. But I think your most likely moves are probably tight end, maybe a safety. And I think that lines up with what I view as their biggest needs.
Are there any middle of the pack edge rushers that you think the Eagles, I'm not saying like to the extent of like, I don't want to see Jannard Avery deals again, but like, is there any like middle of the pack edge rushers to your knowledge that could be available? I can't think of any. All we're seeing is Burns and Chubb and Robert Quinn. I don't know who are any, just serviceable guys, but aren't lighting the league on fire.
Yeah, there's the guy from the Texans, and his name's escaping me. Greenway, maybe? I can't remember. There's an edge rusher for the Texans that it's been rumored he could be moved, and the Eagles might have some interest there. But yeah, overall, I think tight end safety is the much better play for the Eagles than edge rusher. And then the other thing is, are there any players the Eagles might look to trade away? Now, typically you don't see a team that's undefeated heading into the trade deadline making moves. The only player that could potentially make sense is Andre Dillard. He's not super valuable as a backup because he can only play one position. And so if you're keeping him active on game day just to play left tackle, you also have to keep Jack Driscoll active to play right tackle.
Expiring deal too,
right guard. He's on an expiring deal. Yeah. So if you're Howie Roseman, would you be willing to listen to an offer for Dillard, or do you just say no because we're trying to go win a Super Bowl this year?
Yeah, I think you have to. You have other positions that you need to solidify, and Dillard, it's his fault of his own, hasn't made an impact this year. Obviously, he's in a reserve role, and if we lose Mailata, we've proved that we can hold down the fort even without Andre Dillard. So I think it'd be wise for Howie to at least listen to offers if somebody's going to come calling. He's stockpiling these picks. If he gives up a day 2 pick for whatever he's going to do at the deadline, and he could recoup that pick as he's been known to do with Andre Dillard, I think that's a win for both sides. John Greenard is the guy you were talking about with the Texans. Yeah, so
Greenyard, not Greenland, Greenyard.
Greenway, not Greenway, not Green Day.
Green something.
Yeah, so I think it would benefit both sides for Howie to listen to a deal for Andre Dillard. I know you said that. Well, I guess we'll wrap up on this. I know you said it's not likely the Eagles do anything at running back, but Melvin Gordon could be a guy. Could be another guy. I don't know what he provides in pass protection. I'm not sure, but obviously not very happy in Denver, and maybe he does something here.
Yeah, I wouldn't hate a Gordon move. I think he's a very talented running back. He's had some ball security issues.
Fumbling galore, yeah.
It's been a long enough track record that it's an issue. But then again, like, fumbling, it is such a luck-based thing too. Sometimes you can do everything right and the ball gets punched out with a perfect hit, whatever. It's been a long enough track record. He's got some ball security issues, but the talent's there. Ultimately with the Eagles, I don't think running back is as big of a threat or as big of a need.
It's not. It's a luxury thing, yeah.
Because the offensive line is so good. Jalen Hurts is such a primary part of your running game. A mobile quarterback makes lesser running backs look good because the quarterback has to be accounted for. And the Eagles don't just have a mobile quarterback, they've got an elite offensive line. So I know people that are big Miles Sanders guys, they want to take a victory lap on Miles Sanders having played well this year. And I'm not saying he hasn't played well, but Miles Sanders literally has the easiest job in the NFL.
What's your deal with Miles Sanders, man? It's coming from a place of hate, man. What's wrong with you?
No. I'm just saying he's got the easiest job in the NFL. He's running behind an elite line with a mobile quarterback. And so if he goes down, if you're forced into Kenny Gainwell, Boston Scott, Trey Sermon for the rest of the year, you will notice a drop-off. I just think the margins are so big in the running game that it wouldn't make as big of a difference as people think.
Right, and that's why that they were only tentatively like in passing interest in like Christian McCaffrey. And I don't think, as talented as McCaffrey is, I don't think that's a fit for Philly's offense because number one, his versatility as a receiver is what makes him so valuable, right? And when you have a mobile quarterback, I'm not sure that works because it's not like there's a whole lot of check down throws available when you're a rushing. It's not like he's dumping off to McCaffrey. Hurts is up the field by the time a check down is even thought about. Like Hurts is literally his own check down. So I don't think like pass catching backs are a thing. So even when I heard the McCaffrey, like I knew from the rip, like there's no shot in hell he's giving up a premium pick for McCaffrey, which is why he offered a third, fourth, whatever it was. So.
Straight up as a running back, if you take away the receiving ability, McCaffrey's not that much.
He's not a good running back. He's not a good runner.
Yeah.
Or not a great runner. He's not a great runner. Like his versatility, and he's going to be cracked out with Shanahan. So I will say like him, Debo, all of them, perfect for what they do. But for Philadelphia, not the most ideal. Shane, well, I will ask you this. We were talking about the corners and the safeties. Are you telling me that you're more confident in Chauncey Gardner-Johnson at the nickel and Rodney McLeod at safety than you are with Josiah Scott at nickel and Chauncey Gardner-Johnson at safety? You're not a Josiah Scott fan, are you?
No. I would be. Pending Rodney McLeod not looking like garbage, but he was fine last year.
Josiah was fine the second half of last year. The first half was kind of rough.
Right. Well, and he was coming off of injury too, I believe, at the beginning of last year. So Josiah Scott did fine when he was in, but it did limit the Eagles' ability to play their zone match coverages. They had to get into more man coverages because Scott wasn't passing off routes that well. So, I mean, Scott's fine. I do think, though, you need a backup safety. And so if you had one, yes. I would love the ability to plug Chauncey back into the slot should Avonte Maddox go down.
Yeah, I agree definitely there. So the red flags we have circled here: backup tight end, backup safety, potentially a running back if they want to swing that direction, and an edge rusher for sure. As the November 1st trade deadline looms 6 days away, Howie is prone. I think he's made a deal with the buzzer every year for the last 4 years. There was Avery, there was Ajayi, Golden Tate. I think 1 year. So he's something's gonna happen. Something. And Golden Tate, mind you, won us a playoff game. So let's not act like Golden Tate didn't do us anything.
And the moves typically come the day of or the night before.
The hour. Yeah. 3:58, in 59 seconds. That's when Howie likes to pull these things off. But that wraps up this week's episode of the Eagles Player Analysis Podcast with myself, Victor Williams, partner here, Shane Haff. You can find me everywhere on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok at the Philly Pod. Be sure to tune in for all my coverage at thelibertyline.com and catch up on all the pods as well over at the Philly Pod. Search that on all platforms that you get your podcast. Shane, what you got coming up? What you got in the fold? Where can the people find you and your content?
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at @halfandhalf_TPL.
Getting that changed, right? You're working on it?
Yeah. Twitter's
you wanted to get verified, and now look at you.
Yeah, Twitter's being dumb, so I don't know if I can get it changed. But you can find me on Twitter there. My link tree is there to YouTube. You can search out Chalk Talk on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, or if you like the video format, it's on my YouTube as well. Every Tuesday night, I go live with Mark Henry Jr., and we do a full NFL review. So last night we reviewed all of the Week 7 games, so you can go check those out. And, of course, my All-22 stuff will come out on YouTube. Nothing coming out this week. No Eagles game to break down, but I'll be back to it next week, trying to figure out how to get all the content done between Sunday and Thursday and then turn around and do it again. So,
yeah, man.
Crazy week coming up.
We don't got no all 10 Sixers. No Sixers film. No, not your forte.
No, not my thing. Not my thing.
Nah, that's all right. I appreciate you guys for tuning in to another episode of the EPA Podcast. We'll come at you guys again next week, diving into all X's and O's, and hopefully your Philadelphia Eagles will be 7-0 by then. From Victor Williams, from Shane Haff, we'll catch you guys on the next one right here at Bleeding Green Nation.